Hello and welcome to State Matters. I'm pleased to have with me today a person who was sworn into office on January 6, 2007 as a state representative and represents the towns of Kingston, Plymouth, Duxbury, Halifax, Plimpton, and Middleborough. He's a tireless advocate for the issues that improve the quality of life in the 12th Plymouth District and has fought for the needs of children, seniors, and veterans in Massachusetts. He has often stood alone in pursuit of laws that promote reform, transparency, and good government. Since 2013, he has become a leading advocate in the legislature for raising awareness on the dangers of substance abuse and the Commonwealth's growing heroin and opiate epidemic. He's a family man, businessman, has an MBA from Northeastern University, and is a graduate from my alma mater, Cardinal Spellman High School. Please join me in welcoming my friend and colleague, Representative Tom Calter.
Hey,
Tom,
Matt.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate that.
It's a real pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we both graduated from Spellman together.
It's hard to believe.
You were a little bit older than me,
I
though.
had a Muratore ahead of me and a Muratore behind me.
Yeah.
Didn't have the pleasure of having a Muratore in the class of '76.
Yeah, no, it was good. I take all my roots from there, actually, from that education, really.
I was with Suzanne Bump last night, who's also a graduate of Spellman.
Yep.
And
my brother was a friend of her brother, Carol.
Oh, okay.
Carol.
Yeah. Every time I see her, we reminisce about
Yep.
Spellman. There's this thing that pulls us all back together to the community.
Yeah, absolutely. So we always like to start our shows with who our guests are. And for the handful of people that don't know who you are, who is Tom Calter?
Well, Matt, I'm 58 years old. I'm a career businessman in the environmental sector. I got my beginning with my start in the sector with Clean Harbors. I was the 6th employee there and left 13 years later with more than 3,000 employees. And it was a great run. Left there for 2 years, worked in the consulting business with the Kennedy family, the Citizens Group. I ran a company called Environmental Futures. We invested capital in startup companies. And after 2 years, went back to my roots and bought Clean Harbors' competitor, a company called Fleet Environmental. In 2006, I sold Fleet, and the opportunity came up to run for the state representative seat vacated by my dear friend, your dear friend, Tom O'Brien.
Mm-hmm.
And I was successful. I'm now in my 5th term. I love doing what I do. You know, I come from a family of priests. All my father's brothers, all 3 were military chaplains and heavy action, 82nd, 101st Airborne. And it was really my passion to go in the military and become a JAG officer and become a trial attorney in the private sector. That didn't happen for me, but I think that their DNA for serving other people found its way to me because I get great joy and personal satisfaction out of working with people every single day. And as you now know, as a member of the legislature, there's not as much going on up on the Hill as there is in the district. And I think the real, truly great state reps are the ones who define themselves and measure themselves by how effective they are in serving their constituents. And I think you're great at that. You've had a profound impact in your early tenure in the House. And it's what I try to do as well. So some of the issues we focus on aren't always legislative issues. They're issues that we focus on one person at a time. And each one of their circumstances are unique. And so that's who I am. I'm a person that loves to serve others. I've been in the service industries my whole career. And now at the tail end of my career, I'm honored to be serving in the legislature.
Now, I know you have a wife, you have kids, you have grandchildren. You know, what made you decide to go from the business world to run for state rep? What was that one thing that said, you know what, I want to run for this job?
I always had a passion for politics, always. And when I say politics, I mean it as the public discussion of policy, public policy. Somehow we've got away from the definition of politics and turned it into something nasty. You're a Republican, I'm a Democrat. There's never been a nasty feeling or word between us. So I don't view politics in a negative context. I believe, as Robert Kennedy did, that it's a truly honorable profession between people who want to serve and who have ideas about how to make our society better by making good, sound public policy. And so that's what attracted me to the job, the opportunity to serve others and the opportunity to weigh in on policies that will affect my children and my soon-to-be 5 grandchildren. It's very quiet right now that my daughter's pregnant, but this will be aired in November, and by then everybody will know. So I'm announcing it here today in November.
Now, prior to that, you were on the, when doing my research, I didn't realize this, but you were on the Kingston Finance Committee?
I was.
And then you were on the Silver Lake Regional School Committee.
Yeah, I had 10 years of service in the community before I ran for the legislature as a member of the Silver Lake Regional School Committee as we built all new schools, and then as a member of the Finance Committee as we figured out how to pay for those new schools. And that whet my appetite. It was a very difficult time for me to serve because I was traveling all around the country opening up offices. And so it was a difficult time to serve, but I think I got a lot out of it. I certainly got more out of it than I gave to it. And that gave me a sense of what public service was about and solidified for me that that's what I wanted to do. I have a wife of 35 years, Patty. We started, I guess you can't call it dating at 12 years old, but we've been together since we were 12 years old.
That'd be a little creepy nowadays.
Yeah, so we've been together for 45 years. We've been married for 35 years. 3 adult children. Ryan is a Kingston police officer. Kerry is director of clinical education, radiology at South Shore Hospital. And my son Patrick is a Boston EMS medic who just received a promotion to director of peer support for Boston Police, Fire, and EMS. So I'm very proud of all 3 of them.
Yeah, good for you.
We built homes together, so we all live next to each other, which is kind of cool. I get to hang around with my 4 grandsons. And
I tell my kids that too. You just know I have 6 daughters, and we live on a street. It's a cul-de-sac, and there's 6 homes on there. And I keep telling them as they get old, I'm going to keep buying these homes, and they don't want anything to do with it.
Well, you know, it's a whole discussion for another show.
Yeah.
I think if you go back to your grandparents and my grandparents, it was very common for the extended family to live together. And then society got away from that concept. And I told my kids from early on, you know, your dad's had a pretty successful business career and I can help you, but there's ways that you can't help with money. Being able to be there when someone's in crises, babysitting, late night cups of tea, you know, a beer on the porch with my oldest son who had a difficult day on the job the day before. Those are the sorts of things that only extended family can bring to each other. And I think if you interviewed my 3 children right now, they would tell you they had some trepidation and concerns about being that close to the old man. But you know, you have to figure out how to respect each other's space, you know, respect each other's boundaries, be present when appropriate, and be invisible when necessary. And we've figured out how to pull that off. And we've always enjoyed each other's company. We all vacation together. So it's been great for us. I'd recommend it to anybody,
good for you.
as long as they're prepared to respect each other's boundaries.
Yeah, good for you. Well, this show, as you know, is called State Matters. So tell us why you think state matters to the average citizen, to the 6 towns that you serve and the people there.
You know, I could speak for the next 20 minutes on why state matters. Our jobs as representatives are to bone up on all the issues, because many of these public policy issues are very, very, very complex. The average person working 40, 50 hours a week doesn't have time to do the reading and the analysis and sit in on hearings that you and I have the privilege of sitting in on. But to deal with these public policies is to be a great commonwealth. To not deal with these public policy issues is to be irresponsible. By way of example, as we all know, we have a broken infrastructure in Massachusetts. Not everybody wants to talk about it, whether it's broken roads or broken bridges or broken water systems, broken wastewater systems. We've got gas lines in the city of Boston that are made of wood that are 100 years old.
I heard you say that recently. I couldn't believe that. Yeah.
It's true. And we have to address that infrastructure issue. So we have to be able to have adult conversations about what's broken, what it costs to fix it, and how do we pay for it. And I think government matters because if we don't bring those issues to the people and we leave the people uninformed, then we're going to wake up one day just like you would in your own home if you didn't do any maintenance for 40 years. and find out that the home is beyond repair. So we have a duty, we have an obligation to bring information to the people we represent, whether it makes them happy or sad, whether they agree with it or whether they disagree with it. See, I have this great faith that when reasonable people are all looking at the same data, good, sound, truthful data, they will typically reach the same conclusion. It's our job in government to bring that data to the people we represent so that they can make a sound decision. So over the past 9 years, I've spent a lot of time telling the truth about our broken infrastructure. And people see it every day, they feel it every day, but it's almost like the lights, electricity. As long as we turn on the switch, we take for granted where that power is coming from. Our infrastructure is dangerously broken, and we need to address it soon. The issue of the opiates, which I know you want to talk about. I've spent the last 3.5 years organizing and providing forums around southeastern Mass, primarily in my own district, but I've gone to Bridgewater and where else do we go? We've gone outside the district. And, we have the privilege of the bully pulpit. When we go into a room, we get the opportunity to speak. And we have got the opportunity to share ideas and information. So it was 3 years ago, New Year's Eve, that my oldest son and my youngest son, the police officer and the medic, were both administering Narcan at the stroke of midnight. And that's not completely unusual.
In different locations.
Different locations, one in Boston, one in Kingston. What's unusual is the profile of the victim. One was a professional and one was a student athlete. They weren't the people that you would typically think of that were doing heroin. These were wonderful, in every respect, wonderful law-abiding people. So I knew then, Matt, that there was a growing epidemic because I could see the statistics in my towns.
You were ahead of the curve.
Well, only because of the experiences of my two sons. And so I decided to hold public forums for parents because parents suspect things before they become reality. And tried to share with them information about early warning signs, information about education, training, treatment, what to do, how to do it. And it developed a real grassroots momentum of its own. And then all of a sudden this epidemic breaks out. And we're all under attack by opiates. And so that we continue with these forums talking about pathways. And I remember saying to you the other night at the League of Women Voters that when I first started the forums, I remember saying that this is a three-legged stool. We have to do all three things pretty effectively if we're going to get out in front of this epidemic. Well, now it's a 10 or 11 or 12-legged stool. And all of these things have to be done in rapid succession in order for us to get ahead of the epidemic. And I'm really proud of the town of Plymouth for the work it is doing in fighting this epidemic. If you really look at the primary tips of the spear that have to be effective in order to get in front of this, policing, court systems, education through the superintendent's office, health and human services through the hospital. You've got BI and Peter Holden that has become a leader in fighting this epidemic. You've got Plymouth Police Department with its street crime units under the leadership of Michael Muratore that has created the model for policing in the communities. You've got Judge Rosemary Menahan, who created, and through your vote and my vote, we expanded the drug courts to 6 other counties throughout the, 6 other courts throughout the Commonwealth. And so whether you look at education, health, policing, we in Plymouth are blessed with people who are the leaders, and thank goodness we are blessed with them, because given that we're a tourist community and given that we're on the waterfront, we're a prime target. And we're now losing a citizen a week. I think that's the stat, to overdoses. And we've got to curb that, and I believe we've got the programs and the tremendous professionals, the people in place to do that. But to answer your question, that's the role state government plays. It's not just to make laws and raise taxes. There are common good issues. Beating the opiate addiction epidemic is a common issue for every one of our 351 cities and towns. The infrastructure, common issue for every one of our 351 cities and towns. Education, higher education and K through 12. Special education, not only to get the services that our children need, that are special education children, but to find the money to pay for it. So all of these issues are not centric or central only to my towns. They're central to the entire Commonwealth. And we, as a legislative delegation, I'm proud to say, and going back to Terry Murray and Tom O'Brien, right up to the president with you and I, have always been on the forefront in bringing issues to the House and to the Senate that affect us all. And Plymouth is America's hometown. We have a right and a responsibility to be first. And so the reason we've been so effective, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, is in Plymouth County, we've got this extraordinary civility that exists between Democrats and Republicans. So that's another thing that government brings to us. And I don't know when it started. It didn't start with me. It came well before me, where the Democrats and the Republicans in Plymouth and in Plymouth County, they work at getting along. And all of us understand that, you know, the way you make good public policy is by having very data-driven intellectual debates on issues of the day. And from that, we come out with a reasonable compromise that typically becomes public policy that is passed throughout the country. And Massachusetts is typically first. That's not by accident. It's because Democrats and Republicans work at getting along and sharing ideas, and because we in the suburbs understand that the differences, the problem is not between Democrats and Republicans, it's the darn cities taking advantage of us suburbs. So we share that common thread.
And thank you to you, and I don't know if you realize this or not, but you came to town meeting in Plymouth one year,
and
3 or
spoke
4
about
years,
civility.
and you spoke right off the cuff and went on about civility, and it resonated with me. And soon after that, you came to a forum that we had with a bunch of town department heads, selectmen, and we developed guiding principles. And we were the first one in the area to develop guiding principles on how we act in town government in Plymouth. And now it's catching on into other towns as well.
Well, that's nice of you to recognize me, Matt, but that was just a concept that I presented as a member of the Board of Selectmen. You took the lead on that and turned them into reality. And the boards live by those guiding principles today, and that's a model for all the towns in Plymouth County. You know, on the issue of civility, I think it's always worth revisiting that. You know, as we're sitting here today, the end of September, for a show that's going to show in November, it's going to air in November, we're watching the presidential elections. And one of the candidates is leading in the polls, and he's finding it fashionable to call people names and show total disregard for the process or for the individuals in the process. So my prediction is that by November, he will not be leading in the polls. I'll be surprised if he's even in the race. He will have found and then lost his 15 minutes of fame. But you know, when we talk about civility, it's not just common decency that you and I learned at Cardinal Spellman. I like to remind people that our children and grandchildren are watching all the time. And if we allow the type of vitriolic behavior and the bad behavior, forget the word vitriolic, bad behavior that is sometimes supported by people who have got the privilege of being in the public eye, whether it's an athlete, whether it's a politician, whether it's a school teacher, a policeman, a fireman, you're in the public eye. If we allow that type of incivility and bad behavior, after a while, the next generation comes to believe that that's the way it is. And where does that bring us decades from now? Where does it leave us decades from now? So I tell people all the time, you know, in races, I've had a bunch of very difficult races with people coming after me and after my families. After my families, that's interesting. After my family.
That's for another show.
Yeah, that's for another show. And I refuse to respond in kind. Now, you know me to be a pretty aggressive guy, but I don't respond, A, because I think it's inappropriate, And B, I don't respond because it's ineffective. In people's souls, they may like the entertainment value of that behavior, but they don't want that behavior coming from the people who they choose to represent them. Yeah. And I believe that if we can all behave like adults and civilized men and women, even within our public discourse, our children will be better off, our society will be better off. Vinny and I have debated on the House floor a dozen times. And Vinny had his views, I had my views. Both were very valid. We both respected each other's point of view, and we respected where our differences existed. At the end of the day, we reached a compromise. We would both support whatever the outcome was, because all of us got a little bit of our ideology contained within a piece of legislation. And then we left, you know, in my case, I went for beer, Vinny went for a root beer. And we would laugh about it and work the next day in his office or my office on a constituent issue.
Because that's what people expect.
That's what they expect, and that's who we are, and that's what's good for our society. That's what's good for our progress. Nothing good comes out of the mudslaying that goes on. My father used to have a saying. It says, you know, don't ever wrestle in the mud with a pig, because you both get dirty, but the pig likes it. And so I refuse to engage. Oh, don't get me wrong. I'll engage with data and with a strong point of view and a passionate perspective, but I'm not going to get into the stuff that some people get into when they get into politics. And neither will you. You're too much of a gentleman.
Yeah, right. Well, that's terrific. Switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
I know recently you've been dealing with some water issues in some of your towns. It's becoming a pretty hot topic.
Very
Talk
serious
about
problem. I'd really like to, because I know folks from Kingston and Pembroke and Plymouth listen to this. In 1964, there was a piece of legislation passed in response to the water shortage in the city of Brockton. And the statute gave Brockton the right to draw down water and have as their water supply Silver Lake. There's no question that's part of the statute. They have that responsibility. Part of that law also had an obligation tied to it that the supplemental water sources, those sources that are used as a supplement, Montponson Pond, Furnace Brook, that would be used to supplement Silver Lake, that the quality of that water and those bodies of water for drinking and for recreation must be maintained. Fast forward 50 years and Montponson Pond and parts of Furnace Brook are destroyed. The legislation created a 3-person water commissioner board, which was never or discontinued 35 years ago. So I worked over the last year with Rep. Cutler to put that water commissioner board back in place. 3 outstanding individuals, an engineer, a lawyer, and a representative from Brockton, that represent the 7-town Central District, Plymouth County Central Water District. And we're in a little bit of a rub right now because they're giving orders to Brockton, who unilaterally manage the levers, which determine the flow, which is an unnatural flow, to try and deal with the algae problem that's in Montponson Pond. We've made great progress. Brockton came along slowly at first, but they're now getting on board. It's my sole objective to make sure that DEP takes the lead in cleaning up that body of water. I've said to DEP, and we talk about civility, but we talk about directness. If they don't take the lead in fixing up that body of water, then they're going to be assumed to be complicit in the destruction of that body of water. And we've had some very heated, emotional meetings at DEP in the last month, which were in September. And we're making great progress due to the work done by the water commissioners. Brockton takes 11 million gallons a day. And they have a desal plant they spend $60 million on, but they don't make any water with it because this water is free. And that water will cost them a per gallon price. So, and they sell $2 million a year of Silver Lake water to Whitman. And they get the $2 million. And Brockton has no conservation measures. There's been no watering bans in Brockton this dry summer. So things are going to change. DEP is going to take the lead. I had Lieutenant Governor Polito out to tour, or I didn't, Kim Roy did, to tour the Montponson Pond 2 weeks ago. She's
What happened to the ponds that they got destroyed?
What happens is there's a natural flow that deals with algae. Brockton diverts water
Okay, so they
from the supplemental
purposely,
sources
or?
purposely to make sure there's always enough clean water in Silver Lake to provide for their needs. And that's in defiance of the law that says you cannot negatively impact those bodies of water that are used for drinking and for recreation. And it's now becoming a major public health problem. The governor's aware of it. The lieutenant governor's aware of it. DEP has been put on notice. You're either part of the solution or we're going to make you part of the problem. And we've now got their attention. I hope they're listening, because it's not going to stop. Until those bodies of water are clean, we will continue to put pressure on DEP to enforce the law and continue to work with Brockton as forcefully as we can to make sure they're meeting their end of the deal to maintain those bodies of water. What's occurred is disgraceful and it's unacceptable. And it's not going to continue.
Yeah, wow. In the short time we have left, favorite part of the job?
Favorite part of the job for me is coaching young men. As I won't get into this, but you know I do executive coaching as a profession. Since I became a rep, I've worked with young men, both troubled and those young men that are going off to college. And I try to help them through critical thinking determine the important things that are important in their success and in their happiness and in their life. And I provide the same principles that I provide with CEOs to determine the future of their company, to help young men determine the future of their lives as they go off to college or in the business world or in any profession, vocation they choose. I connect with young people. I give it to them straight. Their moms and their dads are grateful for that. I would have to say there are many facets of this job I enjoy, including working with members of this delegation, very much so. But working with the kids that are our future is key.
That's great. Well, Tom, thank you for what you've done over the last several years
Thank
for
you,
your
Matt.
towns, particularly with Plymouth. I know we have a 400th anniversary coming up, but you've been great instrumental in helping us get money for that, so we thank you for that.
And Matt, I want to thank you not only for your service, but for the manner in which you do it. You bring great dignity to the House, and that's what we expect from the
Thank you.
folks in
It's a
Plymouth.
great. I tell people it's a great job.
Well,
It's
you do a great job at it. You
Thank
should
you.
be proud of
Thank you.
yourself, and the people in Plymouth should be proud of you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thanks
Thank you for
having
joining
me.
us today. I really appreciate that. We hope you enjoyed the show today. Thank you again to the hardworking staff and volunteers here at PAC TV for all they do. On behalf of all of us at PAC TV, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on State Matters.